Hi, I'm Scott Peterman, and this is my thesis proposal presentation from the end of fall semester 2011 for the MFA in Design and Technology program at Parsons. Now, I'm a designer, I'm an artist, I'm an inventor, but more than anything else, I think of myself as a historian of the future. Since a very young age, I've been studying science fiction with an eye towards what the science fiction of a given period, what our vision of the future from a given period tells us about where we're headed and about what we viewed of ourselves at that time. Now, this can lead to kind of a dark place, right? A lot of kind of science philosophers and science fictionalists see that things fall apart, that our societies unspiral, and that we head towards kind of chaos and dystopia. Now, I'm using this as an inspirational quote, although I'm not really going to be delving into that negative of a view. I'm really more interested in just focusing on things in the most literal sense, as in objects and materials and the physical world. And I think an argument can be made that with the advent of personal technology, things, materials, are becoming less important. Our music goes from a few hundred years ago, where we had to listen to a real person play a real instrument in a real space, to now where these files kind of exist ubiquitously and can be accessed anywhere. Same is obviously true for performance, most notably so for books. A year ago I had about 4,000 books. Now I have closer to 75, and I have a Kindle. Now, obviously, at a core level, these are still materials. There's still silicon driving the circuits, and plastic and metal and glass being used to bring this media out of the digital world and display it to us or play it for us. But I do feel a little bit unmoored, a little bit like energy and mass are no longer quite as related as they once were. And I kind of wonder about the place of an art object. Right? With the Pietà, the actual marble that was carved from played such a specific part in the creation of that artwork and is so unique. Whereas our digital artworks and digital representations of artworks are at their core ones and zeros. They are ultimately at their most kind of atomic level the same. A lot of my work has been a reaction to this, divorce I see between the physical and the digital. My first work in this program was called Party of the Year, and it was a game that let you leave challenges in real spaces for your friends to go complete, and they often involved doing something kind of ridiculous in the real world. Also made a work along these lines called Next World, which was an augmented reality art app that allowed you to place artworks in real locations using GPS coordinates, and then other people could go there to see them. But you had to be in the actual physical location both to upload and to view the art. I've also done a ton of explorations of just materials in general, from learning how to knit and screen print and sew, to working with ingestible and wearable conductive inks. The real core of my personhood and my nature as an artist has always been theatrical. I've always really thought of myself as a playwright and director above everything else, and even more so than as a filmmaker. And I think that really is because of the uniquely physical, uniquely present, uniquely kind of quote-unquote real-world nature of the theater. Each performance is different because each performance is unique and happens in real physical space. And that led me to my largest work in this program, which is called the Imaginary Marching Band, and it's a series of open-source musical instruments that allow you to play real instruments by pantomiming. So the trumpet, trombone, drums, you can play just by making the gestures needed to play those instruments. Now, this is a commentary on the dematerialization of objects in a pretty direct way, because I am removing the highly sacred object of the musical instrument from the equation, while keeping the very specific, almost ridiculous gestures needed to play that instrument. This project's been a success in a lot of ways, but it's been fairly reductive as well. This is Dave Smith. He's the guy who created MIDI in the 1970s. Now, MIDI is a very useful way of creating music electronically and of storing that musical performance to be able to use it again or alter it at a later date. But it's also pretty reductive. It doesn't really get the sum total of music. And so I've been working, moving away from the imaginary marching band and working with non-reductive musical instruments with the idea of perhaps creating an individual instrument for a specific person or a specific installation. Music and sound in general are really nothing more than sound waves, than displacement of air. And it is the height of those waves, the amplitude, that determines the volume of the notes, how loud they are. And the width or frequency, the amount of times they occur within a given time period, determines the note or tone. But what this leaves out is timbre, is the distinctive sound of a note that makes an A on a trumpet and an A on a violin sound entirely different. And I believe this timbre really comes, and many people agree with me, from the materiality of the instrument. And that's what's so unique about musical instruments, is you have this perfect combination of craftsman, material, performer, and composition. At some point in the development of musical tools, this unique combination of material and content or performance have become divorced, but it certainly wasn't always that way. This is one of the earliest phonographs created, and these are really interesting because you could actually see the music carved into the phonograph roll, cut into the wax. And if you knew what you were looking at, you could even decipher that in your mind to be able to, take that music and replay it, say, on a violin or something like that. So the method where the music was recorded in the material also gave a sense of what it actually was. And there have been lots of experiments since then that have played with this nature of musicality and materiality and the interplay between them. I particularly love a recent one. This is Playing the Building by David Byrne, which I think is a really elegant installation. It basically allows a user to interact, or a visitor to the gallery to interact with this harpsichord, but each note you play plays an element of the building, from striking, a column to rattling against the glass on the ceiling. And I feel like this really ties heavily the musical generation process and the space it's located in and the physical materials used to generate that music in a really, really elegant way. And this project in particular inspired me to do my own work, which, like many of my projects, appeared to me pretty much fully formed in a dream. Now, I had this dream about a work I call I Shall Destroy All Civilized Planets, which involved a chamber music group playing at the top of a large structure. And they're hooked into microphones, but they're also hooked into biometric sensors and various other methods of kind of measuring the musical performance. The music they make is then translated using an automatic knitting machine into knitted material, which then is torn apart by the system and reinterpreted as a new type of music, one that is based on the materiality of the recording. That materiality is then destroyed, making it truly transient. In the dream, it was destroyed by fire. And then there's some sort of other artificial intelligence, artificial life, that takes the input from that destruction and creates some new type of music or new type of sound off of that. So it's multiple loops between the kind of in between the music to information to material back to music loop. A way that doesn't really take a stand, right or wrong, on this transition or this the nature of music as this kind of constant cycle in our modern world, but rather just makes it kind of painfully apparent to the viewer. So this is more about drawing attention to something that I see rather than taking a stand or solving a problem. And I've done lots of research into the methods I can use to record this, from physical to traditional to things like the Kinect. Done a lot of thought in the types of materiality. In my prototype, I used a receipt printer printing on paper, but there's obviously a wide variety of materials, from the very transient like water or fire to much more permanent things like wood, marble, and then, of course, the fun part. I've done a lot of experimenting with methods of destruction, from doing a little bit with muriatic acid to using a paper shredder to some of the more crazy suggestions like liquid nitrogen. And so I have created, for the purposes of first semester, a prototype of this, which you can see in the next blog post down. You can see a video recording of it, that uses a simple force flex sensor to take input It then prints that out on a receipt printer, records it using a webcam, and then the computer uses the data recorded on that webcam to create music. Now, this project was, how shall I put it, not necessarily well received. I think that I am making some bold and sort of inflammatory points without really necessarily backing them up with scholarly thought. I don't want to do that. I don't want to make those type of wild points as scholarly arguments. At the same time, I don't necessarily want to feel obligated to take a stance or to back my points up. So once again, I'm changing what I'm doing, and I will in the next few days get my pitch presentation for that up, but I've received some very good feedback at the end of last semester, which was this. If you want it all to be about you, it has to be all about you. And if you want to make bold points without backing them up, you have to write fiction. So I will be using all of the development of the material music machine that I did this semester, but I will be using it actually in the context of a narrative fictional theatrical work. And so stay tuned for some more information on that. But thank you guys for watching my presentation, and I'll see you in class.